You're listening to episode 146, Caryn's Story, a daughter with ALCAPA, a congenital heart defect. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Child Life on Call. This podcast is a safe place for parents to share their stories about what it's like to have a child that has a medical experience, diagnosis, disease, and or everything in between. We know there's power in sharing stories, and that power multiplies when you can listen to other parents who have walked a similar path to yours. Giving and getting advice is great, but hearing how another parent navigates the complexities and nuances of healthcare is even better. As a child life specialist, my role is to support, validate, and provide emotionally safe spaces for kids and their families, and I am so honored to be on this journey with you. In addition to parent stories, we sprinkle in some expert episodes every now and again that have content for both parents and professionals in the field of healthcare, all with the mission to empower parents to be confident advocates and partners with the care team during healthcare experiences. We're so glad you're here. Hello, my friends. This is Katie Taylor. I am the host of Child Life on Call, and I'm so happy that you're here today. We are going to be speaking with Caryn, and when I tell you that Caryn and I could have kept talking, it is 100% true. So we have tried to do as much as we can to put all of her goodness and story and advice, very, very tangible advice for parents as much as we can as she is telling her story. So I wish that it were longer, but anyway, I'm so glad that I had the chance to talk with her because she has some really specific advice about what to do when you're faced with that crisis in healthcare, when you're forced to make a huge decision about like where your child's going to need to have surgery and how do you even know how to advocate because they're telling you that it needs to happen really fast. And just like her, I would have had the same gut reaction to just say, yeah, tell me where to go. Let's do that instead of doing the research or homework yourself. So I totally hear her on that. The other thing I just want to bring up is that recently on my social media, I have posted a lot about the use of numbing cream. And so I wanted to talk a bit about that just to give you some key points and takeaways when you're talking about numbing cream and using them with kiddos during procedures. So I'm just talking from personal experience. This is absolutely not medical advice, and you should absolutely talk with your pediatrician, your doctor, before moving forward with anything. But I can tell you about my experiences working in the ICU and ER and NICU and surgery and all of those different places where we can use numbing cream because the truth is we try to use it whenever possible. There is no reason for kids to have to go through a painful poke, especially if it provokes anxiety for them. And so whenever we can use it, it's always okay to ask. And then we kind of have to put it out there in the world that guess what? It's okay for the physician or whatever reason to say no, right? And we have to listen when that happens because it's ultimately going to be their call. And there might be a series of reasons that they would say no to this. But here are some great reasons and things to think about when you're using numbing cream. One is people always ask me for the names of them, and this is just from my own personal experience. One we used in the hospital is called LMX, so literally those 3 letters. Another one is called EMLA, EMLA, and these are all what's called a topical lidocaine, so basically a cream. One of my favorite ways to use any kind of numbing cream is putting it on a few different spots before the actual poke happens, because as we know, sometimes veins roll, sometimes the child moves, and that may be a reason that the poke doesn't work. So of course, again, talk to your healthcare provider about when to do it. I also love the technique of doing it before your child actually needs it so that you get to prove the fact that it is actually numb. So you're building that trust with the child that yes, this is numb, it is going to work. And the other tidbit is that if you're going to use numbing cream, you have to wait for it to work. There is absolutely no use in putting it on for 10 minutes if it is not going to get to the full amount of numbing, right? So we're trying to build trust and have your child trust the healthcare team. And if we only keep it on for 5 minutes, it's not going to do anything. So no matter which numbing cream that you choose, it will always have instructions with you. And of course, you'll be doing it under the care of your provider. So you just ask them, what's the best way to use this? Or the pharmacist would be a good person to reach out to. So there are other two kind of numbing sprays that you can use. One is called a J-tip, which I do not have personal experience with, but I think it's worth looking into. And the second one is called Pain Ease, and I've used that as well. But again, all of these need to come from your doctor. But I always just like to give information and empower you to go ask your own questions and know the words to say so you can advocate for your child and for yourself. Okay, so let's get started with Caryn's story. Thanks for indulging me about that numbing cream, but I get these questions all the time, so I thought we could just address them here. But anyway, I'm so glad you're here, and let's get started with Caryn. Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you guys know that if you are a parent, a child life specialist, or professional working with children, you're going to want the hospital or physician's office or urgent care that you take your kids to have the Child Life On Call app. It is an evidence-based tool designed to empower children and families during medical experiences. And 100% of the child life specialists who have used this app believe that it can help with expanding child life's reach beyond the bedside. And 100% of child life specialists believe it helps parents feel more empowered in their child's care. Learn how to get the Child Life On Call app for your facility or doctor's office by going to childlifeoncall.com/partners.
Katie, thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Yes, of course.
And thank you for being able to share this podcast with other families. Mm-hmm. Thank you for putting this together.
Well, thank you for being willing to be on it. You know, I think it's sharing stories is what makes us feel human and connected to each other. And one of the really cool things about this podcast is it's not just parents that are listening, but we have, students who are wanting to go into medicine who are listening. And I can't think of a better group that need to be hearing parent stories than them. So I'm so grateful that you're here, and I know that your words will resonate with other families. And even if it's not the exact same, diagnosis or surgery or story, something here will resonate. So I'm grateful for you.
Thank you very much.
Well, why don't you just start off and tell us a little bit about you, your family, where you guys live, and a little bit just so our listeners can get to know you.
I am Caryn Schender. I am married to my husband, Joe, and I have a daughter, Elaina. We have a dog and a cat, Harper and Penny. We are from Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up in Chicago, moved out to the D.C. area where I met my husband, and that's where my daughter's surgery was. It was in Baltimore. And then just recently moved out to Atlanta.
Okay, gotcha. So when did you guys get to Atlanta? How long have you been there?
We moved here in April.
Okay, so I'm sure we'll get into all of like the navigating, relocating care,
right.
All of that good stuff that comes when you move to a different location and you leave, the care team that you've known for so long. Well, why don't you talk to us a little bit about kind of the time that Elaina was born and what that was like for you guys when you were living in the DC area?
Very closely monitored from a maternal fetal medicine doctor because I have type 1 diabetes. I was diagnosed when I turned just before 30. So I'm a late diagnosis, but I had it. So I was being monitored by an MFM, and we had no idea. There was nothing that was known in utero. It was not until 2 months after she was born on her 2-month vaccination appointment day that we found out. It's because in utero, the baby is reliant on the mother's blood supply. So the baby's typically, the baby typically doesn't begin to show any symptoms until about 8 weeks at the earliest. So we were very lucky that we found out that she had ALCAPA, which is a type of CHD, which is a congenital heart defect. You're very lucky to find that out just about as early as you can.
Okay, so unlike some other CHDs that you can see and kind of gear up for in pregnancy, that was not y'all's situation. So did you know at your 2-month vaccinations that, like, had you been suspecting anything, or was it kind of just like you've been run over by a freight train? Like, what are you talking about?
Yep, complete freight train.
Yeah.
She was not sick much before the diagnosis. It was obviously something that she was born with, but we weren't aware of that. Yeah. As first-time parents, we didn't know what was normal behavior for babies and what wasn't. She was a very easygoing, very chill baby. And, when things started changing around 6 weeks, I was on high alert and cautious, but didn't think emergency yet. I was trying not to be that hypochondriac first-time mom, right? So there were some things that were evident. And, I should say that, while individually some of these symptoms may not be alarming, combined, I definitely think that they should be taken seriously. So, she stopped acting like herself when previously she liked tummy time, and then she stopped liking tummy time. Or, she had a dry cough, which we had Googled, and this was literally the only time that WebMD said a cough means nothing. And we were like, okay, so we shouldn't be worried about that. But it was a symbol, or not a symbol, it was a symptom. Cold extremities, it can be normal for newborns, but it was a little bit more for her. And, again, individually the symptoms may not be alarming, but as a whole package, they are. Falling asleep during feeds, again, it could be common for the average newborn, but she was falling more asleep. It was very difficult to keep her awake than the average newborn. She was crying during feeds. She had some rapid breathing. Looking at some videos now, you can notice a little bit more of her breathing than in the moment. We didn't notice that. She was more breathing from her belly. She was blowing lots of bubbles out of her mouth, almost like foaming, but babies blow bubbles, but it was more, more of them.
Right.
And more frequent than I think is normal. She was, like I said, a very chill baby. She was suddenly pretty fussy. This was often written off as colic, but this was not like her. So we knew that it really wasn't colic. She stopped gaining weight. There was a slow, and she, as I'll go into in a little bit about how we found out, a fever.
Okay. Gosh, you're listing off these symptoms, and it's like, I'm sure we have all experienced all of these things with our kids at some point, and hindsight is so 2020. And like you said, looking back at the videos, and I've told this story on the podcast before, but my son had torticollis, which is very benign, but it basically just means his head is over to one side. And man, I never even noticed it. And I look back at pictures now and I'm like, literally, boy, your head is tilted so far over, and I could not see it. It's just when you're in that new stage of parenting, you're so much obsessed with everything. And then it's really hard to see a lot that's going on. So it's so crazy to look back and think about what that time was like.
Absolutely. And my daughter, actually, because she was in the hospital for so long, was treated for torticollis. So I'm familiar with that. The PT of the follow-up for that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how she got the diagnosis and what happened at that vaccine visit.
Absolutely. So it was her normal 2-month vaccination appointment with her doctor. We went on Wednesday, September 16th, 2020, and we were told that she had a mild fever ranging from 99.4 to about 100.2. So they sent us home and said, we're not going to give you vaccinations today. Just monitor her. Come back when the fever's gone. If it gets up to 100.4, go to the ER. So to me, what's the difference, right? They say even though an infant fever isn't alarming into 100.4, what's the difference in 100.4 and 100.2? So that was close enough for me. So I said, okay, we're going to go anyway. So I had to go alone because this was 2020. So it was COVID, summer of COVID-19. After about 5 hours in the ER by myself with my daughter of scans and testing, everything kept coming back negative. The on-call doctor at the end of the night, Dr. Friedman, thought he heard a murmur. And he told us to go back to the pediatrician the next day. And we'll never know what caused her fever that day. We never found out. But we're extremely grateful for it and for Dr. Friedman that he was on call that night. By catching it early, he saved her life and he prevented any further damage to her heart. So then the next day, Thursday, we went to our pediatrician. She examined her heart in a tent outside because of COVID. She wasn't even allowed inside. So they confirmed the murmur. He sent us to a cardiologist on Friday who diagnosed her with ALCAPA, which stands for I can't say this word, so I'm going to try. Anomalous left coronary artery from the pulmonary artery.
Okay, you nailed it, by the way. That is the hardest word to say. I can never say it either, but you said it.
At the cardiologist's office on Friday, I sat with Elaina and they did the EKG and the echocardiogram while my husband was in the car on FaceTime with us because he wasn't allowed to come upstairs because of COVID. So after a while, he's like, all right, I have to go to the bathroom. And the technician was like, okay, he could come upstairs. And as soon as I saw him standing, as soon as I saw him standing in the doorway, my heart sank. And I knew there was a terrible problem because why would they let him upstairs? So they took us into a separate room with our daughter, and they told us the diagnosis and that they were working to get us a room at the hospital because we had to go that night for emergency surgery the next morning.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was how we found out.
I can just imagine it's like that moment is probably etched in your brain of seeing your husband standing there and like what that meant, the implication of that.
Yeah, my heart completely sank because I just knew why is he standing here? They would not have done this otherwise. Yeah, and he didn't think anything of it at first until they took us into another room. And yeah.
So did you guys go home that night or did you go straight to the hospital? How did that work?
So when we got the news, our entire world crashed down. My whole life, my biggest fear was childbirth. And that something would go wrong with me or in labor or something would be wrong with the baby, like a birth defect. That was my all-time biggest fear. So all through the pregnancy, that was just like a fear of mine. Yeah. And then once, everything went well, we brought her home from the hospital and we had some like a NICU stay, but because of my diabetes, but that was minor compared to everything else. But so just a few weeks before her diagnosis, I remember sitting on the couch at home, holding her with tears streaming down my face with gratitude that she was healthy and that she didn't have a CHD. So when we got the news, our entire world crashed down, right? My biggest fear had come true. We sat crying in the cardiologist's office as the doctor drew out the heart and the chambers, and he explained what was wrong with our perfect little beautiful baby girl. And I was an utter mess. And to say that we were scared is an understatement. We were completely shell-shocked and panicked. It's a parent's nightmare, and I feel for everybody who gets a diagnosis. I can't even find the words to describe the emotions that we had. I must have been in such bad shape, though, because the doctor hugged me, and I remember that because he was the first person to hug me other than my husband in 7 months because of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And it felt very strange to have somebody hug me.
Yeah.
Like in my personal space. It was,
yeah, that's got to be crazy feeling.
So to answer your question, what happened after we got that diagnosis? We weren't allowed to go home after that cardiologist appointment. We didn't even have time to process the news. In a terrifying and emotional whirlwind, they sent us straight to the hospital and began prepping for that emergency open heart surgery the next morning, Saturday, September 19th, 2020. I had asked if we could go home, get clothes, or if there's a different hospital that we could go to. And they told us no, that we had to go straight to the nearest children's hospital. But it wasn't a hospital that specialized in children's cardiology. We were in such shock that she needed emergency life-saving surgery that we didn't stop to get a second opinion because we didn't think we had time to get a second opinion. So I wish that we had gone to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore first. I wish that it was an opportunity or an option. And I wish we never went to that first hospital. The Johns Hopkins has a wonderful cardiac specialty unit, and the doctors there saved her life.
Yeah.
I wish we had just gone to Johns Hopkins, the specialty hospital. They have a wonderful cardiac unit and brilliant surgeons, and I wish we had gone there first.
I so feel for you because it's like when somebody's like, hey, your kid needs emergency surgery to live, you're like, okay, you tell me what room to go in and we go there, right? It's like that is your
Yeah.
instinct. And, you can look back and say, I could have done this or that, but I would have done the exact same thing. Like, yep, you're telling me what to do. We are doing it because I want my baby to live to tomorrow, which is essentially what you're telling me.
Yeah. We didn't know if she was going to live another day, and being told that tomorrow you need surgery, I thought, I asked if we could go home or switch hospitals, and they said no. So we took them
Yeah.
for what it
Yeah.
was. And at that time, those 2 weeks that we wound up spending in that first hospital were the longest of our life. It turned out that was just the beginning, though. It just seemed that the bad news kept coming. And we were discharged after 2 weeks, but 3 days later, we returned because she wasn't eating. We went home, and she was taking 40 mLs, and then by like 2-3 days later, she was down to like 20 mLs, and it just was getting worse. And my mama gut was like, this isn't right. I know it's a few days after surgery, but she should be eating more than this. And so we went back to that same hospital because our thought was, well, she's already in the system. They know her. We should go back to where they know her already. Again, wish we hadn't done that. Her surgeon at that first hospital, the chief of pediatric surgery, literally sat us down and said to our face, she won't need another surgery again, and that nutrition will heal her this time. And he could not have been more wrong. And she couldn't keep anything down, and she was crying out in pain with the most heart-wrenching cry. We can only assume were heart attacks because of what she has. And I was panicking, yelling at the nurses to do something. And I'm not exaggerating when I say they were literally killing her. And it was heartbreaking. And so we demanded a transfer at this point to another hospital. Our cardiac surgeon there, not the one who was wrong, but the cardiac doctor who had diagnosed her, he was on board there, and he contacted three major cardiology hospitals. One of them got back to us, and that one was Johns Hopkins in Baltimore.
Wow.
So we fought for a transfer. Long story short about that, they told us that we'd have to wait for insurance to process and that we couldn't get a transfer. And I mama beared them and was like, that's not happening. I will do everything in my power. You will transfer her today. Yeah. And it wasn't until months later, actually, that we got all the insurance cleared. So it would have been months for us to get out of there. So we got the transfer. And once we were there, they told us that she was too fragile and her body couldn't handle another surgery yet, so that they put her on the ventilator for a whole week just to let her body rest from this previous surgery. And so it was just a week where she just sat on the ventilator, and there was nothing we could do, or time went so slow. It was painful, but we knew that we trusted that this was the right thing for her body. So exactly 1 month later, October 19th, 2020, so a month to the day of her last surgery, we had to go through it all over again. Her surgeon, Dr. Metler, told us she may not make it through the surgery, but being on the vent and having another surgery was her best option, and we trusted him. And essentially, he had to redo the previous surgery because the first surgeon had done an antiquated procedure. And I am not a religious person, but I found myself praying. She had spent 2 weeks in the PCICU, the pediatric cardiac intensive care unit, recovering, and every day seemed to have new battles. Finally, we were sent to the recovery floor, and she had feeding issues because the muscles in her throat were too weak from the fentanyl, which is the opioid, and from being the painkiller, I should say. The fentanyl is a painkiller. From being on the ventilator 4 times in a month. And the first time watching her go through the drug withdrawal was hard. To go through it all over again was unbearable. and she had to learn how to swallow and eat again. And we probably would have been discharged months earlier if she didn't have that feeding complication. But we couldn't go home until she could eat. And we were finally discharged on December 1st, 2020. So this began September 19th, and we were discharged December 1st.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm feeling so much for you. Like getting from day to day, having gone through what you did at that first hospital, and then having no choice but to really trust the second hospital. We'll be right back. Finding the right nutrition for your child that meets their needs can be a challenge for parents and clinicians alike, especially if your child or patient has food allergies or has a condition or illness. You want to feel good about the products you are selecting for your child. To me, finding products that are USDA organic, plant-based, and easily digestible is very important. When one of our very own mamas here at Child Life on Call was choosing nutrition for her sweet son who has complex medical needs, Kate Farms checked off all the boxes of things that were important to her. It is a choice that she felt good about. Kate Farms has outstanding customer service, which during the formula crisis put her at ease. Kate Farms is offering 15% off their products to Child Life On Call parents and professionals who go to their easy-to-navigate, no-fuss website, katefarms.com, and enter code CHILDLIFE. That's one word, CHILDLIFE. Kate Farms, www.katefarms.com, code CHILDLIFE. Code can be used for one purchase only and is valid through May 31st, 2023. Kate Farms is a paid sponsor of today's podcast. What do you remember about like the Johns Hopkins that made you feel like they understand what's going on that, you know, is maybe different than the first one? Like what, I know this is kind of a separate question, but what did they do different that was like they understood you and what you were saying and what she had gone through?
Well, there's Dr. Mettler, who's the surgeon, and Dr. Klugman, who was the pediatric director of the floor of the PCICU. We got transferred on a Sunday, and they were both there. They sat us down at a computer, and they looked at her heart, and they looked at all the records that got transferred over, and they showed us what was happening with her mitral valve and with her heart, and they explained what they would do, what was wrong. They were comforting. They were honest. They, to our face, said, we don't know if she'll survive, but here is what needs to happen. Dr. Mettler has daughters and children of his own, and so he showed such empathy that we can tell that he cared for his patients. Katie Swan, the clinical operations manager of the Heart Center, she also came in on her day off, and she was just a support. She is like Dr. Mettler's right-hand gal, and she's just family support, and she came in on her day off to support us and be there for us, and that to us just said volumes of the team. And then what choice did we have? When we had reached out to all the other hospitals for the transfer, we had also talked to Dr. Mettler on the phone before the transfer, and he talked us through what the process and a little bit about him, and he was the only one who called us back. So that
did the match for you. Let the universe take its course.
If we had waited another day, right? Absolutely. And if we had waited another day, maybe another doctor would have called back, but we didn't have that time to wait either. So they just were a wonderful team.
It sounds like you understood too. Like they sat you down. They were like, we want to make sure you understand what's happening and what did happen and what needs to happen. And that can be really difficult when you're like, have you ever studied the heart before? No. It's like you're essentially having to become an expert at this organ that you probably didn't know much about.
That's absolutely right. We crash course in the heart that we never wanted to know.
So walk us through what is the diagnosis and what does it entail?
Sure, absolutely. So I'll try it again.
You don't have to.
So she was diagnosed with ALCAPA, which stands for anomalous left coronary artery from the pulmonary artery. So the only treatment for it is surgery, and it requires lifelong monitoring. It is a congenital heart defect. In a normal heart, the left coronary artery sprouts off of the aorta, which is a major blood vessel, and supplies oxygen-rich blood to the heart muscle through the mitral valve. The aorta takes oxygen-rich blood from the heart and sends it out to the rest of the body. The pulmonary artery, which pulmonary means lungs, is a major blood vessel that takes oxygen-poor blood from the heart out to the lungs to get oxygenated. So there's blood that has oxygen that goes to the body, and if it doesn't have oxygen, it goes to the lungs to get oxygen, to come back to the body, to come back to the heart, to go out to the body. So for those with ALCAPA, the left coronary artery originates from the pulmonary artery, so from the lung area, instead of from the aorta. So the developing blood vessel to the heart muscle does not attach correctly, and blood lacking in oxygen is flowing in the wrong direction. So that means that blood that doesn't have enough oxygen is carried to the heart muscle instead of going back to the lungs, causing the heart muscle to not get enough oxygen, and that causes the heart tissue to begin to die because it doesn't have oxygen. So essentially, ALCAPA can cause heart attacks in the baby.
Wow.
And because ALCAPA was damaging Elaina's heart muscle, her mitral valve was seriously damaged too. So she needed surgery to repair the ALCAPA blood flow and to repair the mitral valve. The mitral valve is a heart valve that opens and closes. I like to think of it as pinball flippers, letting the blood go from the upper and lower chambers of the heart on the left side. So when the valves don't close tightly, it lets blood leak backward the wrong way. So luckily, we had caught it early enough before the damage was irreparable. So we were able to repair instead of replace the mitral valve. So
that makes complete sense. You say it so well, and I'm so very impressed.
Oh, thank you.
But that makes complete sense. And so she essentially had the one heart surgery she had.
Exactly. That's a great question. So I think our understanding is she had a mitral valve repair and not a replacement. So because the damage, Dr. Mettler was able to go in and repair it because there wasn't as much damage as if it needed. Because if it needed a replacement, she would need another surgery at another point in time to replace the replacement, because her body wouldn't grow with it, because it would be artificial and it wouldn't have grown with her. But because he was able to repair it, the hope is that it will continue to grow with her. A little bit about ALCAPA, for those that don't know, it is extremely rare. Only 1 in 300,000 births have ALCAPA. So when someone says that it's rare that X might happen, it provides me with no comfort, because she's a rare child. I know that she is, I know that she's special and rare and unique. So this is just proof, right? Because ALCAPA is so rare and it often goes undetected, many babies don't make it to their first birthday. I'm not a medical professional, and this is completely just my opinion, but I personally believe that undetected CHDs like ALCAPA are more common than we know and could be a possible or a potential cause of SIDS. Because often when a baby dies of SIDS, there's not an autopsy, but perhaps if they did one, they might find it was an undiagnosed CHD. And again, I'm not a medical professional. I have no scientific data to back that up, but logic to me says that I know that a lot of kids with ALCAPA, it doesn't get diagnosed and they don't make it to their first birthday. So
Yeah, I was actually having that thought as you were kind of, telling about it, and how if it goes undiagnosed, that it's life threatening. And so I was having very kind of similar thoughts to you, and it's definitely a question worth asking. How did you handle the stress of all that you had to deal with, back when you were in the hospital, getting from day to day? And I had just heard you recap so eloquently this very rare defect that you're able to speak to so specifically, and the fact that you were able to understand it and get through. How did you do that? How did you get through those days?
I definitely had and still do have PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
I think physically and emotionally. Physically, my body was breaking down from the stress while we were in the hospital. About 2 months in, while we were at Hopkins, my elbow started getting eczema, something I have never had before. And my throat began to feel intense, tight pressure around my neck, as if someone was strangling me. Literally, I felt like I was being suffocated. And that suffocating feeling turned out to be reflux, because my body literally was shutting down from the stress. So being that it was 2020 and COVID was still at dangerous levels, that made things exponentially harder. We weren't allowed visitors, but for most of our stay, my husband and I were both allowed to be at the hospital together with Elaina. Then around Thanksgiving, the COVID levels went back up. And so they started only letting one parent in at a time. And this was the last straw for me. It had been since September that we'd been in the hospital. So all I wanted to do was be with my family for Thanksgiving. And the two people that I was most thankful for in the world were alive. And I just wanted to be with both of them for Thanksgiving. And I'm not kidding when I say I got kicked out of the hospital.
Oh, Caryn. Wait, so how did that happen?
So Thanksgiving was, I just wanted to be with the people that I love most. And my husband was in that day, or that morning. He went first. And I just wanted to be with them. So I snuck up. I went up anyway, pretending that he wasn't there. And I am not kidding when I say I got kicked out of the hospital. Security escorted me out and did not allow me back in for the day. So in my defense, it was Thanksgiving, and I just wanted to be with my daughter and my husband in her hospital room. But anyway.
Oh, that is the best story I've ever heard. Badge of honor for you. It is 100% worth the try. And I'm so glad that you tried. And now your daughter gets to be like, guess what? My mom got escorted out by security to be with me.
And I have another fun story for you. A couple days before that, some woman started talking trash to me when we were getting our visitor badges in the morning. Something along the lines of that what she was going through, nobody else's issues mattered, or something like that, right? Some kind of talking trash to me. What it really was doesn't matter, but okay, so mind you, I'm a very calm, positive, nonviolent person. I literally
Yes.
And I know I don't sound like I have a good track record right now because I just got escorted out of the hospital, but
no, it makes me think so much better. So yes, I'm excited.
I literally almost got in a physical fist fight with this woman. My husband, no joke, had to hold me back. That was not my best day. So,
you know what? You're put in this situation that is like unimaginable. And it's just going to take one like little crack of a rock to have the whole thing come falling down. And I think that's probably exactly what happened.
It was just not, you can't tell somebody else who's in a hospital how they feel, what they feel is not valid, or everyone has their own pain, and no one wants to be there. And, that was the last straw for me.
I'm sorry that happened to you.
It makes a fun story though, doesn't it?
It does for sure. But it's, in those times, like, the exact reason this podcast exists, right? Like you want that support from other parents, not the
Right,
judgment.
exactly. And, emotionally, I don't think you ever get over the trauma of the experience, both seeing your child go through it and your own experience. Internally, I was a wreck, but I tried to hold it together the best I could for my daughter and my husband and my family. And, as experienced through the reflux, that I was literally choking in my neck. I was holding it together.
Right.
My husband and I spent every single day in the hospital with her. Initially, we didn't want to board our cat and dog, so my parents had come from Chicago to help us in Maryland, and thank goodness they did, because what was supposed to be 7 to 10 days in that first hospital turned out to be 73 days in 2 hospitals and 2 back-to-back heart surgeries. So we had to take turns and try to go home and to visit my parents and our pets occasionally, and to get that mental break on the weekend. And I know we both felt so guilty not being there with her, even for just a few hours, but we knew it was necessary for our mental health. So emotionally, afterwards, coming home from the hospital was hard too. I focused my energy and stress in 3 ways: loving my daughter and my family with all of my being, becoming a pediatric sleep consultant, and writing a book.
I'm in awe of you. I'm like you. Yeah. I please continue on. I love hearing what you've done.
Well, thank you. Number one, I focused my energy on loving my daughter and being grateful for every second because she was alive. I tried to shift my perspective of priorities in life and tried not to sweat the small stuff too much. Being home is terrifying because you no longer have nurses at the ready 24/7 or a pulse ox to monitor. You're suddenly on your own, and all of the what ifs run through your head. Will I hurt her if I hug her too tight? If I hold her upside down? What if she trips and falls? Every time she cried, as babies do, is it because she's a baby? Is it she's in pain? If she gets sick, how will I know if it's the heart or the flu? Everything runs through your mind. And so when she'd wake at night, is it because her heart hurts, or is she waking because she's a baby? But every time she woke, we'd worry that it was her heart. And so that last worry led me to my new profession. I became a certified pediatric sleep consultant and founded my own company called Sleep Tight Tonight. The stress of not knowing why she was waking overnight led me to read all the ways to teach her to fall asleep independently and how to sleep through the night. Once she slept through the night, we were exponentially less stressed about the night. And I knew how the benefits of sleep helped us, and I wanted to help other moms and dads teach their children better sleep habits and to sleep through the night too. With COVID and a high-risk daughter, I couldn't risk putting her in daycare, so going back to the office life just wasn't an option for me. I got certified as a pediatric sleep consultant, and like I said, I launched my own company, and it's called Sleep Tight Tonight. And number 3, I wrote a book called My Scar is Beautiful. During our hospital stay in the month following, I focused my stress on creating a positive resource for my daughter and others like her. I want her to grow up proud of her scar and everything she'd been through. My Scar is Beautiful. It's filled with positive affirmations and cute illustrations, including a couple Easter eggs. There's some pictures of animals, and our cat and dog are featured. And so it's an alpaca because she has ALCAPA. But the book, it encourages the reader to wear their scar with pride and confidence. While inspired by my daughter, the book is not CHD specific, and it applies to kids and adults and anyone who has a scar of any origin.
I love that. You're a doer.
Thank you.
You find a gap and you fill it, and those are my favorite types of people. Whether it's telling it through a story or writing your own story or doing it, you're pretty incredible.
Thank you. We had done a lot of research, and we had found some wonderful CHD books, right? Like there are some really great ones out there, but what we found was a lot of them were about the CHD story, or look, this is my name and I was in the hospital and I had surgery and I have a scar, right? Like it does a great job of explaining what CHD is. But what I was looking for was a book that encouraged her to wear her scar with pride and more about the being confident with the scar, right? And I didn't see that out there, so I made it.
You made it. I love that. What were some, if any, positive, unexpected, or surprising moments throughout your journey?
The experience, as traumatic as it was, it bonded my husband and I. Only we understand exactly what we experienced, and we experienced it together. I think it actually made our marriage stronger. I learned more about the heart than I ever wanted to know, and I became an instant expert about the heart. I became an author and now have a positive impact on people's lives. I have a profession that I love, and we recently moved, and I met some wonderful new friends who are fellow heart mamas, and I wouldn't have been introduced to them if it weren't for our kids.
I would say I hear that a lot too, is that the community of people that you meet are unlike any others, and you would have never known them. I hear that a lot. So I'm glad to know that you have that community in your new city as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to have a community because you're not alone.
Would you tell us a little bit about what Elaina has taught you about yourself since becoming her mom?
Yeah. So, she has taught me that she is incredibly brave and kids are resilient. They look like they're fragile little breakable things, but they are strong little fighters. She is the funniest, goofiest, smartest, sweetest, most kind-hearted little girl, and she's the smartest toddler I know, and nothing slows her down. Every day, even in the days following her hospital stays, she always wakes up with a smile on her face. And she changed my life personally and professionally. I'm an author and self-employed business owner because of her. She helped me find myself personally and my passions in life. Professionally, as a mom, like I found myself because of her. And she's the light of my life and the best thing I've ever done. She inspires me to be a better mom, a better daughter, and to really appreciate and value life. I don't take anything about my daughter for granted, and I am grateful every day that she is alive and healthy.
Man, I'm ungrateful for her and for you too. And just sharing so honestly about, how difficult it was and still is.
Yeah, I think some advice that I would give to parents who are going through this diagnosis. I'm so sorry that you and your child and your family are going through this. It's the hardest thing to endure as a parent, and no one should have to go through this. And I know you feel alone, and you're probably terrified right now. I know I was. But know that you are not alone. There are wonderful communities out there, and if you ever need someone to talk to, someone who has been there, you can always reach out to me too. I know that the world seems like it's crashing down and that you have a ton of questions, and if you could have done anything different or why this happened to you, if it will ever be okay. Your child having CHD is not your fault. Your child is special and they will fight like hell, and you will too. Looking back, some more of my advice to parents is to take a breath and don't just go to the nearest hospital. Find the best hospital with the best doctors for your child's diagnosis. I tell them to fight and be your child's best advocate. They can't verbally fight for themselves. So if something doesn't feel right or the doctors want to do something that you're not comfortable with, speak up. Don't be shy. And don't be worried if you'll offend the doctors or the nurses' feelings. Take notes. Nurses and doctors switch shifts, and they'll ask questions, and you'll want to be prepared. Be there for rounds. I also recommend that parents take photos and document it. And I know that sounds strange, but I took photos every day and created a photo album so that when Elaina grows up, she can see and understand what she went through and how brave she is, and so that none of us ever forget. And for those with ALCAPA, I absolutely hated it when people told me that one day in the not so far off future, things would get better, and every day things would get a little easier. But it's true. Maybe your child needs monitoring, or maybe they need more surgery in the future. It never gets easier, but every day is another day that your child is alive. And while things may not be how you dreamed, this is your new normal, and you will adjust and you will keep going. Being in the hospital is the hardest. Once you're adjusted to being home, things do get less intense and a little easier. And again, you always have a friend in me if you need help.
Thank you so much to Caryn for being so open and sharing everything that you and your family went through. And I want to make sure you can all follow along with Caryn. So I'm going to give you a series of ways that you can do that. So just pay attention for a little bit. But here are all the ways you can get in touch with Caryn. You can go to her website, which is myscarisbeautifulbook.com. You can go to sleeptighttonight.com, which is where she has her sleep consulting. And then she is on Instagram in 2 different places. She's on there as myscarisbeautifulbook, and she's also on there as sleeptighttonight_coach. She's on Facebook in those same ways. So you can look at My Scar is Beautiful Book or Sleep Tight Tonight Coach. And those are all the different ways you can get in touch with Caryn. And I'm so grateful that you were here today. And thank you guys so much for listening. I'll see you here next week. Thank you so much for joining us on the Child Life On Call podcast. The only reason this podcast keeps on going is because of you and listeners like you. So please join in on the conversation with us on Instagram, Facebook. I'm even on TikTok now, y'all, making a fool of myself. I haven't danced yet, but maybe it's coming. You can find us at Child Life On Call. We also have a website, and that has all of our information about the Child Life Circle, about the Child Life On Call app, and a blog with new information all the time. That's childlifeoncall.com. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for listening to these episodes and being a part of this community. We are so grateful and so honored to be able to provide this for you.